So let's talk about the remaining five types of essays that we're actually going to discuss, which are your descriptive essay, the narrative essay, the compare and contrast essay, the admission and scholarship essay, and your cultural identity essay. Um, so we will start first with your descriptive essay. If you've actually browsed the material that I've given you, it falls under the pattern of development, which is description. And actually, in that pattern of development, basically we make use of our senses, right? Your touch, smell, taste, hearing, seeing, um, to describe a certain scenario or a certain thing. Basically, a descriptive essay answers the question, what is actually being described. um, it's an essay which basically your own essay, which is actually in detail, wherein you actually make use of, well, you can make use of descriptive words. um, if you want to make it creative, you may use figurative language, you may use analogies, metaphors, and so on and so on. So this type of descriptive essay can actually be, um, it can be part of a creative writing thing, but we can also make it into a much more formal, in a formal way or professional way. Like, let's say for example, the different the different ways to cook pizza. Okay, so it's not process, it doesn't show the process, but basically it's describing the different ways to actually cook pizza. And you're going to describe how, or what are the ways of how to cook pizza, and that's it. It's how easy descriptive essays are. You're basically just describing. And if you are describing a certain thing, uh, basically you're just, you're just asking what are the characteristics, what does this thing look like, um, and you're actually showing, you're showing things, right? Descriptive essay is actually you showing uh, certain things, okay? And we can actually contrast that to your narrative essay. So if descriptive essay is about showing, okay, a narrative essay is all about telling what is. Okay, so if the first one is description or descriptive essay, basically shows what is, and then you have the narrative essay, which actually tells you what is. So again, showing is different from telling. So let's take a look at the narrative essay. So basically, you narrate what is happening. Okay, so for example, you can actually we can actually make use of your journals, wherein you would be describing what happened to you within this day, particular type of day, and you will create a narrative essay about that. For example, during the midterms week, what what did you experience? So you will be writing down what you've experienced. You are actually telling what happened. So what happened was this, that, and that. Okay, how do we now contrast that to actually your descriptive essay? Basically, you now go in detail. Okay, because in narrative essay, there are three things that you actually need to remember. Basically, it answers these things: what happened, when did it happen, where did it happen. It doesn't really show detailed things. Let's, if we take a look at the example, for example, these celebrations were meant to be celebrated with the people, etc., etc. So what happened, this is actually what happened. If we actually contrast that to description, um, it's more of an in-depth uh, variation of narration, wherein it focuses more on the details rather than what happened. Description would focus on showing, which means what are the details with what happened. Okay, narration is what happened. Basically, it focuses more on the chronological order of things. This happened first, then this one, then this one, then this one. That's narration. But when we talk about description, it focuses more on what happened within that first scene, or what happened within that first event. Show and describe what happened within those things. So it's again, it makes use of figurative language, which contains figures of speech, analogies, metaphors, etc. So that's why it is considered to be more vivid, to paint you a much more clearer picture than what narration is actually giving you. So basically, you narrate and then you describe. You tell and then you show. You tell and then you show. Telling, narration, showing, description. So that's actually the difference between the two. And now if we actually move forward, we will go to your compare and contrast essay, or your comparison and contrast. So, what is actually the difference between comparison and contrast and cause and effect? Cause and effect is parallelism. Comparison and contrast is actually, you are actually looking at the things that you're comparing two things, and you're finding their similarities and their dissimilarities or differences. That's it. Comparison and contrast, you look at two things, you either find the similarities or find where they are different, or you actually show the two. So that's basically your comparison and contrast. So um, if we actually take a look at this example of comparison and contrast, again, in this type of level, um, it's not the simple one paragraph comparison and contrast, no. So there are also different forms. You can either show, just like in cause and effect, you can actually lay out it as this. You can show this one, the one side, and then you can show the other side. So you can have two comparisons. Or you can actually do it alternating. You describe, let's say, a certain feature of this topic, and then you add a different feature, or featuring a different topic. Therefore, you create alternating patterns of comparison, and then you can actually contrast um, when you do that type of pattern. And there are also types of transitional words. I will not really get into that because I've already sent the module. You can actually browse it, but yeah, I'll just flash it here on the screen. If we actually are contrasting things, there are transitional expressions. So the following that you see are transitional expressions for contrast, and then maybe here, comparison. So you know that something is being compared if they use transitional expressions such as this, and then you know that they are contrasting things if they are using transitional expressions such as this. So that's basically how you do your comparison and contrast. And then second to the last is your admission and scholarship essay. Okay, so basically, when we talk about admission and scholarship essay, this is a type of essay wherein it would serve as your ticket or your key in terms of your higher education. So I am not sure if we do that here in the Philippines, but usually before you apply to a certain university in other countries, you actually write. No, you write them, wherein you actually show these factors, wherein you would explain why you chose your course, why you chose this degree. You would do a SWOT analysis on yourself. What will be your strength, your weaknesses, and if they accept you, what opportunities would they get, and the threats that they would get or you can improve on. Then you share about your knowledge about, of course, the college, not just the degree that you're actually applying for, not just the field that you're actually applying for, but you're actually sharing your knowledge about the college. So, for example, you're applying for UP. How much do you know about UP? Something like that. And then lastly, you would actually stress how much of an impact you would be if they would be accepting you. So, what would they get from you in return? So, that is the content of your admission essay. And then you have the scholarship essay. This actually varies from this varies uh, from school to school, but basically when you apply for a scholarship essay, there will be requirements wherein you would be stating your financial difficulties, um, a background, your personal background, a short bio about you. So that's how you do a scholarship essay, and what promise can you give them being a scholar of this certain school or university. So that's basically your admission and scholarship essay. And lastly, your cultural identity essay. Now, what do we mean by cultural identity essay? Again, let's take a look first at the definition of the word culture. When we talk about culture, this is actually something, it's a means, or this is an observable way of doing things within a certain group or within a certain norm. So this is a standardized, not really standardized, but it's an observable, repeating thing or way of doing things among different norms, among uh, certain groups of people. So that's culture. So whether it may be a nationality, for example, our culture in the Philippines as opposed to the culture in Japan, Korea, it can also be a culture within the workplace, a culture of teachers in TUA as compared to other teachers in other universities. So, what type of culture are they building? Or the culture of Tunisian students as compared to the culture of uh, students from another school, or the culture of senior high school students as compared to the culture of college students in Trinity University of Asia. So again, it's very important that we actually define the culture first, the meaning of the culture first, before we actually write uh, our cultural identity essay. So it can actually go both ways. We can either write about our own identities, or we can actually write a culture that we are actually observing. So that is actually how we write the cultural identity essay.